More than 50 episodes of the Jeremy White Podcast are available on demand. That's almost as many times as Paul Stanley yells "people" at a Kiss concert.
That was a joke.
You see, I'm smiling.
An all-new episode of the Jeremy White Podcast, Tuesday at noon. Available wherever you stream. Catch up on past interviews and episodes on demand now. Subscribe so you don't miss any of it.
Yo, what's going on?
Guys.
Hello.
Good
day, Josh.
Dude, it's been a minute since I've seen you. Last time I saw you was 2015. You came to the Beat 92.5 in Montreal. You and the guys who did an acoustic performance of One Love.
Yeah, I remember. How are you, man?
Good. How you know, you were the only singer that we've ever had at the radio station to distort our microphones.
I'm not surprised.
When you hit that big note right at the end, like in that last chorus, you know, it's just like that. Oh, like, man, just killed it. And Mitch, he actually he pulled back from the mic and everything, still distorted it. The engineers in the other room were like, powerful pipes.
Nice. Nice. Or cheap equipment, one of the two.
Yeah. A
Maybe
414, man. It's not a cheap mic, I'll tell you that. Well, listen, Josh Ramsay, brand new solo project getting set to roll. Brand new single called Lady Mine featuring Chad Kroeger from Nickelback, available now. You're catching it on radio across the country. Brand new record's going to be coming out early next year, which we're going to talk all about. Welcome to the show, Josh Ramsay. So good to see you again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude.
How you been, by the way? I mean, what's going on with you? Like in the last couple of years, you just sitting at home, like working in the studio and stuff, or?
I mean, like, yeah, since the pandemic, I basically, like, I had always wanted to do an album where I played all the instruments myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I never really got around to it, because there's this whole Marianas Trench thing, and then the pandemic.
Well, there was until you go solo.
No, I haven't gone solo. The band is fine. But
give it 5 years.
Basically, the pandemic happened, and so I couldn't leave the house anyway. So I just was like, maybe I'll do that solo record I've been thinking about.
Yeah. Well, how is it different from doing a record with Marianas Trench with the band versus the solo project? Are you not allowed to bring all of your ideas with the guys? They don't like some of your ideas. Like, what's?
Oh, no. We're great. We're great with each other. It was just I'd say it's different in. I had to just trust my gut more because it didn't have a lot of people to bounce ideas off of, you know, and so I had to just rely on instinct a little more often. Yeah, I mean, it was just me by myself, no other producers or no, it was just me in a room for a year. But I think because of that, like, the last Marianas Trench album, which was called Phantoms, which I think came out in 2018, I want to say.
It was 2018, yeah.
That album, I'm really proud of that album, but the truth is it was a little shorter than I wanted it to be, but we had a deadline. I mean, we had a thick, hard dead, and it was like I'm surprised anything came out.
Wow.
I remember it was Boxing Day, and I had to start mixing because of when the album had to be done. I had to start mixing the album on January 1st, and it was Boxing Day, and I had not written the opening track or the closing track, which is always like the big track. So I had to come up with. I had to write and record the opening and closing tracks, which on a Marianas Trench album, those are always the big, epic, crazy things
with your big interludes and your arrangements and everything.
Yeah, so I did. So on that album, that I was like, I had 7 days to do that, and I did it, and I'm really happy with those songs. But like I said, like the album was a little more concise than what I would have wanted to do. Whereas this album, there was a pandemic happening, so it's like there's no deadlines. It doesn't matter. I can tinker away and just spend forever on this.
Right, you can just totally Mont Lang this whole project.
I can do whatever. So it took me about a year, but I did take. Of hands-on time, it was probably more like 8 or 9 months because I had a couple of things happen. Like I lost both my parents while I was writing the album, so that was like, I took some time off when both of those things happened, and I also had a big move. So there was like all of a sudden my house was in total disarray for like a month or whatever. So
your life was in shambles, essentially.
There's a couple times where I was in shambles. So I would say like hands-on time, it was probably about 9 months of me working on this. But it really was like, you know, the album really is like, what could I do if time just wasn't a factor and I was just allowed to tinker away for as long as I need to get it exactly where I want it to be.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, it's quite grand in terms of the productions and stuff. It's quite grand.
Well, talk about the productions a little bit. I was, you know, talking about, you know, with the loss of your father and everything, obviously with his history with Little Mountain and everything. And, you know, you basically grew up in recording studios. I mean, being at the helm of this entire project on your own, I mean, are you drawing from some of those influences? Are you, what records are you listening to try and, you know, pull from on this album?
Well, I mean, the first thing I did was I thought about was, okay, so I write all the songs in Marianas Trench and I'm going to write all the songs here. So what's that going to be? How is that going to be different? I can't, because one major thing I didn't want to do, and I don't think fans would want me to do, and I know the band certainly wouldn't want me to do, is to just make a Marianas Trench album on my own. That's a dumb, well, who needs that? So then I was like, okay, so if it's not a Marianas Trench album, but it's still just me writing the songs, what does that look like? And that sort of led me to be like, I'm going to make a bunch of choices that I would not make on a Marianas Trench album. Right. And I am going to try and have each track on the album be a different genre. That's what I'm going to do. Every song is going to be a different genre. And that's what I did. So it is quite, it's a little bit chaotic, I suppose, because it is like a scattershot of so many genres. Like you guys have heard the song with Chad. You guys have heard Lady Mine.
Yeah.
So
great song.
Thank you. But I mean, wait till you hear it in context on the album, because you hear that song and then it goes right into 1940s big band swing. Like it's really all over the place. But like, so it, you know, I went all over the place. There's like big band swing, then there's country, then there's EDM. There's a full-on like 90s grunge song, which I'm quite happy with.
Any hair metal versions? Any hair metal songs?
The grunge song gets pretty close. Pretty close, yeah.
So it's late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. It's like 91. Right. But then there's also, I wrote one song for I lost both my parents in 6 months. And I wrote a song for each of them, neither of which are sad songs. They're very like loving songs.
Celebration
songs.
Thank you.
Celebratory, yeah. So
celebratory, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
And I learned so much about music as a whole from them. Arranging and singing and writing. So for both my parents, I wanted to do something that would be, musically speaking, a big flex. Like that's more what I think my parents would like. So the song for my mom is like, she came up and her career was like the 60s and 70s, and she loved like the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Queen and stuff like that. So for her, I wrote a song that I was trying to write, like, you know, like the Beatlesy songwriting style, where it was a pop song, but all on like overdubbed symphonic instruments. Like they used to do that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I wrote a song called Spellbound for my mom. That's that. And it's kind of goofy and magical, because she was kind of goofy and magical.
Nice.
And then the song for my dad is, I wrote him like a full on like epic symphony. And
wow.
Oh my God, you guys, the recording of this song, it was the most epic recording journey I've ever gone on, because the pandemic was happening. So I didn't think I'd be able to get a symphony orchestra, because you can't put that many people in a room, right?
Right.
So, okay. So basically what I did is I did a bunch of research online, and I bought all of the best orchestral sample libraries available on the planet. And I just like, you know, at first I wrote the song virtually, like just all with virtual instruments. Mm-hmm. And to do the arrangement and write it properly, it took me about 3 weeks of just doing it every day. And then I realized it clicked. I was like, well, wait a minute. How many people can we have in a room? If there's social distancing in a studio, how many people are we allowed? And it came back and was like, well, you can have 4. I was like, oh, okay. So
yeah, it's not much of a symphony.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do it like this. Okay, so from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock, I want the first violins. And then from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I want the second violins. Yeah. And I slowly went through, and it took about 4 days of recording basically 4 people at a time, a whole symphony orchestra. And then it took me about 2 weeks to edit it all together to make it actually sound like a unified thing, because it was, and the tracks, oh my God, you guys, like normally when you record an orchestra, yeah, there's individual mics, but most of it comes from, they call it a decatry. There's 3 mics. It's just 3 mics that like a room sound. That's where you get most of the sound from. But we have to do that for each player now, because everyone's going like one at a time. So by the end, oh my God, the song is like, it has about 400 tracks, I think. Like, it's like, it was an editing nightmare. It was just a nightmare to edit this thing.
And is it just like a wall
Mutt Lang? Forget Mutt Lang. We got Josh.
That's insane. So yeah, so it's just like a big stack, like a wall of sound at that point.
Yes, and it's man, like I wanted it to sound like Hans Zimmer or something, and it does, but like it was just it like the journey to actually get it there was like just never-ending work.
John Williams, Josh Ramsay over here.
Yeah, I was going for it.
That's great. So talk about, I mean, you said that every song on this record is essentially a different genre, and I'm going to be honest with you, I love that. Because I love every genre. I mentioned how we always say there's music I like and music I don't like. I don't necessarily see genre. So
I hear you. I think it's because really, it was actually very freeing for me to let go of the idea of genre, because then I was like, no, I'm just going to focus on writing good songs. Good songs. That's it. Just good songs. I don't care what genre it is. It's just got to be good. And there's something very freeing about that, being like, well, this wouldn't work on this radio format. I don't care. I'm just going to write good songs.
Well, you know what? Look at what Shania Twain and Mutt Lange did. They did the up pop version and then the up country version with all the country arrangements and the pop arrangements. I mean, a good song is a good song at the end of the day. But to talk about Lady Mine, for example, I mean, you strip away the big production and everything. You could play that on acoustic guitar and sing the melody and the lyrics, and it's a good song. Is that how a song starts for you, or?
Thank you. No, not usually. Usually for me, I usually, in terms of the music itself, I usually write most of it just in my head while I'm doing something else. Most of the time, a melody will pop into my head, and then I'll start to picture different ideas for what the chords could be that would support the melody the best. But it's just, I do it all internally. And then once I've arrived at what I think it is, then I go to the studio and I start to record it.
Right. So you're not sitting there you're not programming a beat first and then laying down a bass line, or
no.
Wow.
No, by the time I'm doing that stuff, I mean, you have to do that stuff eventually. By the time I do that stuff, I've got the music like 90% worked out already.
Yeah.
Just in my head.
And it's just trying to execute that and get it down onto tape.
Yeah, I think that's why for me, it has always made sense to be a songwriter and a producer, because to me, I think it's sort of one and the same. Like, the songwriting part is the coming up with the idea, and then the producing stuff is the laying it out in its best light. Like, it's sort of definitely one and the same for me anyway.
Do you ever get frustrated where what you're hearing in your head, you're just not getting on tape? You're just going, I can't get it. Does that happen?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes for sure. You know, that's a really easy place for that to happen is when you're programming synths. If you're picturing a synth sound in your head and you're like, I don't know, and you're looking through presets on something and there's like 5,000 presets and you're like, okay, great.
Only,
Oh, perfect. I will admit that's in the past, sometimes that's when a little marijuana has helped me go a long way. Because you're just well, you know, you're a lot more patient. You're a lot more patient to just sit there and be like, okay, let's sit here for 5 hours. I don't care. Fine. You know what I mean? But yeah, the other times sometimes where I hear it in my head one way and it's not coming out and I get frustrated is on a specific vocal. That can happen sometimes where I'm like, I know my voice can do this thing and I really want it to do it and it's not doing it for whatever. Like that happens sometimes. I mean, usually you get there in the end, but you know, but yeah, that can happen sometimes for sure.
I love this.
When I was
go ahead, Mitch.
I was gonna say, like, when I was on the very first Marianas Trench album, I was really way too set in my ways at that time, and I would reference other people's stuff, like guitar tones, for example. I would reference other albums where I thought there was a really good guitar tone, and then I would be like, we have to get this exact guitar tone. And as soon as you start chasing someone else's sound, you're never going to get it. Even if you use the same guitar, the same amplifier, the same microphone, it's a different day, it's a different time. It's never
in the fingers. You're not going to have those fingers. So
and just everyone is unique and we all do it differently. And like,
Yeah.
on our first album, I thought like Dave Grohl's guitar sound was like the best guitar sound ever, but it doesn't matter. Even if you're using all the same gear, it's still not going to sound the same. It's just like the weather outside is different. It sounds different. I don't know.
Yeah.
So once you realize to stop chasing a sound and to just make your own sound, that's when you get good. That's when you get good stuff.
That's really good advice, because a lot of artists these days, I mean, you listen to modern radio and like everybody's sampling and trying to achieve, nostalgic tones and this and that. It's like that was already done. Like, I love the fact that the 80s are coming back, but at the same time, it's like I could use one less Moog bass.
I could use more 80s.
Yeah.
And just quickly, since we're talking about the 80s real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off, but your dad did own Little Mountain. What was that like in terms of people? I mean, were you just sort of hanging out with Night Ranger and Bon Jovi and Motley
Bruce
Crue?
Fairbairn and all those guys? And
like, was that just a cavalcade of all the greatest rock stars? And we just become so normal. It's like, oh, there's Nikki Sixx again. Hi, Nikki.
Yeah. I mean, in short, yeah. But you have to remember that for me, I grew up there, so it wasn't weird to see Nikki Sixx or Bon Jovi or Bryan Adams or anything. That's what I thought adults did when they grew up. Like,
they hang out with Bryan Adams.
Well, yeah, because
they are Bryan Adams,
right?
Yeah, that studio existed before I was born, so that's all I knew, right? So, like, I mean, and then a lot of those iconic bands were recording at my dad's place, and then a lot of those singers were at our house taking vocal lessons from my mom.
Oh wow!
So I mean, I really did think that when you grow up, you just become a really successful musician. That was my example of adults.
Right. So
right.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah, I think it affected me in a few ways that I think were good. I think on the one side, I feel like I grew up on the other side of the glass in terms of like fame and famous people, and so that has never held any mystique to me whatsoever, or allure in any way.
It's prepared you.
It was just like, it was very normal to see like ultra famous people, so it just gave me a different sort of grasp of showbiz, and to not be so enamored with fame and like and all that. Because man, I can tell you guys, I'm sure you've met plenty of famous people where like you can tell where if that is the goal, if the goal isn't. My goal has never been I want to be a famous person. My goal has always been I want to be good at my job and do good work. And if people recognize me for that, great. But I don't care if someone recognizes me in the street or whatever. I don't care. Yeah. But the people where that's the goal, it's so empty and it's so vapid that once they get there, they realize that it hasn't filled any sort of hole in the soul at all. And it's just, I feel like if you're chasing fame for the sake of fame, it's oh man, that is an empty existence. That is an empty existence. It's not for me.
It doesn't fill that void at the end of the day.
And a little advice: if you don't want to be famous, have a podcast.
There you go.
That's the way to go. You're talking about chasing sounds and all that. Of course, Little Mountain had the drum sound. Is that something that for your albums you've gone, you know what, I got to get the drum sound, because
did you go into the loading bay and set up some mics?
The loading bay sound. So Little Mountain, so like for anyone else like who's not as familiar, like Little Mountain was this huge studio, and then it ceased to be in the 90s.
Right.
And then Studio B, what was Studio B, still continued and is still there to this day. It's just had a few different names over the years. Now it's called Hipposonic, but it's still the same Studio B room. The Studio A room for a long time, which is the room with the iconic drum sounds and all that, for a long time was divided into rehearsal spaces for forever and ever. And then in the last few years, producer Garth Richardson, he started leasing that side, and he runs a recording school called Nimbus. So they turned it back into Studio A, but it's sort of like the student stuff that's in there. So it's, I think you may need to bring in like a lot of gear if you wanted to like do a pro recording there, because it's for students, right? And it's great that there's a great place to learn and stuff. But yeah, I did talk to Garth. I would like to go in there and do a drum sound one day. And there was one song on this album that would have been good for it, but they were busy at the time.
Damn. Yeah, because that loading bay, I mean, geez,
Loading bay,
everybody from Bob Claremont to Bob Rock, I mean, everybody talks about that. Like that.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, everyone, you'd record the drum. They would record the drums in the big, and Studio A is a huge room, so they would record in there, and then the doors to the loading bay would be open, and it was basically like a huge reverb chamber. It's all concrete. I've seen some pictures. I don't think this would have sounded good, but I've seen some pictures of them actually putting the drums physically in the loading bay, which is insane to me. That's like putting the drums in an empty swimming pool or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just cavernous.
Yeah, but listen, they tried stuff back in the day. Now you just Pro Tool it and preset it, but back then you had to physically think of some way to get that sound. So
now you've got the Bob Claremont and emulation plugin, and you can just try and get that.
Click.
Talk about Lady Mine really quickly, because you listen to the Marianas Trench music and it's the complete opposite of this. I mean, you've got this Zeppelin-esque kind of riff going. My favorite part, by the way, is the Mutt Lange-ish 3-part harmony part right in the middle of the second verse. And you've always been an incredible vocal performer, and vocals have been always the highlight of the Marianas Trench records. Talk about producing this song and getting the sound going and everything. And how did you get Chad on the record?
Okay. Well, Chad and I have been friends for a really long time. I did work on a Nickelback record with Chad a few years ago.
It wasn't Dark Horse, was it? You didn't work with Mutt Lange, did you?
No, I did not work with
He is obsessed with Mutt Lange. Have you noticed?
Yeah, for good reason. He's like one of the best producers of all time. Yeah,
I'm the Mutt Lange guy.
Yeah, who isn't? Yeah, Mutt Lange is talented kid.'s gonna go far, that Mutt Lange.
Got a future.
No, but I had done a record with Chad, like just from a song, like a couple of co-writes or whatever. Mostly in Hawaii, actually. That's a whole nother story that's got a lot of funny stuff in it. But I was working on this song, and it started out with me thinking, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to do something that feels like the 70s, like that feels like Lenny Kravitz or something. Like, not that Lenny's from the 70s, but his music certainly is very.
It's got the vibe.
All those influences, 70s, right? Man.
For sure. So, and I love Lenny, and I was like, I want to do something like that, but like maybe a little more energetic, but like still like that vibe, and with like a horn section. Mm-hmm. And then that riff just popped into my head, and all of a sudden it was just and I was just over and over. And then I was like, okay, what kind of vocal do I want? Where can my voice sound really rocking? And I knew that whenever I sing along to Highway to Hell by AC/DC, my voice will hit the Bon Scott tone, sort of. And I even have the trigger for it, the no stop sign, speed limit. I knew as soon as I sing that grit will come. So I wrote it in the same key as Highway to Hell, using that note as a C. So I was like, okay, I got to make sure that the melody sits right around C. So that was my starting. That was all I really had, my starting point. And then as I was working on the song, oh my God, you guys, my poor wife too, because I was working on the song at home. So for like a week, all she heard was just just constantly for a week.
That's okay. You just turn to her and you say, listen, it paid for your kitchen. So just.
So I was working on the song, and I really wanted to do a song with Chad, because I've always wanted us to do something singing together. Mm-hmm. And I was working on that song, and I was like, well, who do I know who could sing this? And then I was like, I know one person who could sing this. It's got to be Chad. He's the only guy I know who could hit these notes. I wonder if he would do it. He would sound amazing on it. And I thought it would be a cool choice, because it doesn't sound like a song that people would associate with me. It doesn't sound like a Marianas Trench song, but it doesn't sound like a Nickelback song either. So I thought that would be a kind of a cool departure for both of us.
It's something completely new.
It's just different. And I called Chad, and I quickly walked him through. I was like, okay, man, so I'm working on this album, and every song is a different genre. And I've written this sort of 70s throwback song. And I wasn't like, will you sing on it? I was like, could I send it to you? And if you like it, maybe you could consider taking a verse on it or something. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe he was a little bit drunk, and he was like, it's fine, buddy. Just send it over. I'll do it. So he actually said yes to doing it without ever having heard the song.
Wow.
That's great. So what's it like to have modern rock's greatest frontman on one of your songs? I mean, come on.
It's truly an honor. And I mean, he knocked it out of the park. You guys have heard it. He sounds amazing on the song, as I knew he would.
Sounds amazing on every song he sings.
He's a great rock singer. He really is a great rock singer.
Yeah.
And I've been in the studio with him while he's working on Nickelback stuff, and I can tell you, like, he only does like 2 or 3 takes. Like he sounds like that. He lays it down super quick, and he's a great rock singer. It's really funny, like when Nickelback started getting their blowback that happened, maybe some oversaturation perhaps, and people started having people loved to like make fun of Nickelback and stuff. I was always like, yeah, Chad's crying his way all the way to the bank, guys.
Yeah. Well, dude,
it's the greatest PR move ever. Yeah. It gets them talked about all the time.
And you know what? If you get a blowback, that means you've done everything right and you're huge. Like, who else
60 million albums.
Yeah, who else got a blowback? The Bee Gees. So,
right.
Yeah.
Listen, it's funny. 60 million albums sold. Let them hate all they want.
Yeah.
You don't do that you don't sell that many records by accident.
I interviewed Mike, his brother, and I said to him, it's like, well, how does it feel to be the world's most hated band? He's like, listen, when I'm filling arenas, I'm laughing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those guys, they have a total sense of humor about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And frankly, Chad is like such a good songwriter too. I mean, dude.
Such a good songwriter. Like it's crazy.
I mean, I remember the first time I heard Photograph on the radio, and I actually called him and I was like, dude, this song is going to be huge. Good job. Like, wow, that is a great song. And it is still a great.
Those songs on that, I mean, like Dark Horse is my favorite record aside from Mutt Lange, the involvement. But I mean, like the songs on the album, I mean, you listen to stuff like If Today Was Your Last Day and like Never Gonna Be Alone or This Afternoon. Like there's such fun songs, but you listen to the lyrics and like it's such good writing.
Oh yeah. And like super, he's got a really great sense of melody too. I mean, like his songs are so melodic. I know from working with, it's funny, like him and I write songs in a very different way. It's always fun when you get when you work with other songwriters, because one thing I'm sort of discovering as I continue to learn about writing is that everybody does it differently and that there's no real one way.
Well, what's the biggest difference between you and Chad? Like, what's his writing process and what's yours?
Mine starts with a melody will pop into my head while I'm doing something totally unrelated. Usually, a melody will pop into my head. And then I just picture what music I think what the chords would be that could support the melody the best. And usually a song sort of presents itself. But I do it all in my head. I don't want to sit down and play guitar or piano or whatever. I just do it all up here. And then I record it. And then usually I write the lyrics once I have the song to sit there and listen to, and it's like recorded. And then I'll start on the lyrics. Wow. Chad is very much focused about being a storyteller. It's sort of more of a Nashville type of approach. Like he's very concerned with what are we singing about? What is the lyrical concept of this song? And actually, like when we were working together, because I just think of melody first and then figure out what the lyrics will be after, he actually wouldn't necessarily, like if I were to sing Chad a melody, it wouldn't really sink in for him if it didn't have a lyric attached to it. He's much more like, I want to come up with words, and then the melody just sort of like presents itself to him. So like he really comes at it from a storyteller perspective.
Wow, it's almost like more of a putting poetry to music in the end.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Years ago, I worked with Simple Plan, and when we were working together, those guys, it's that even further. It's Chuck and Pierre show up, and Chuck has like a book where he's written like 25 possible song titles, and then a quick breakdown of what the song could be about. Like verse 1 will talk about this, verse 2 could be about this, and the chorus, like a little treatment. And he's got like 25 of these little like working title ideas. And then then the three of us sit down and go through each of the titles until we landed on the one that we thought was the best. And that's like a 2 or 3 day process, getting to like, okay, so the song's gonna be called this, and we have a breakdown of what it's going to be about. Then Pierre starts to sing and play chords, but he doesn't do that until we've already gone through that whole like 3 day process.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. Those guys are like super thought out. Like those songs are very, very thought out.
Wow. I wonder how long it took Chad to come up with Something in Your Mouth. That must have taken months.
You should ask him.
Burn it to the ground. Oh, listen. Chad is like in our top 5 want to interview people like ever.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
I only met him twice, but he's great.
Another great thing about him that I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize, because like his sort of persona on stage is pretty serious, but he's like actually like such a class clown. That guy, he's like he's like the funniest dude ever. He's hilarious.
Well, listen, the Josh Ramsay show coming out next year. Brand new single available now featuring Chad Kroeger. When is this record coming out? And are we going to get physical product? Can I put the vinyl? Can I drop the needle on the wax?
Hell yeah. I just got the test pressing of the vinyl like 2 days ago.
Nice.
I think the album's going to come out. I don't know the exact date yet, but it is going to come out right at the beginning of spring.
Wow.
So we'll put out like another 2 singles before that, I think.
And you're going to take it on the road at some point, or?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Let me ask you one question before we leave. Since it's so different and the tracks are, you've got the big band and the swing and the rock and all, are you worried about fan reaction at all? Like if you only sell, let's say 10,000 rather than 100,000, is it still successful because you did what you wanted to do? Or does it have to have a commercial success attached to it for you to say, yeah, this was worth it?
Oh, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. That's a great question. I think for me, artistically, I think it is a success for me. And that is really what I set out to do. I think you're making a mistake as a songwriter if you write the songs that you think people want to hear and you are writing and you're what I would call chasing hits, like I've worked with people like that. And I think the second you're just chasing a hit, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get anything great and anything unique. Like I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but like I did work with a songwriter early on in my career who literally would just look at like what are the top 10 charting songs in the States? Okay, so how can we rip off a little bit of each of those and get as close as possible without getting sued? Getting sued. Like what do we just need to change this much of? And that's the way that person works.
Yeah, it's called blender writing.
It's like a chop shop. And you know what? That person's very successful. So I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but that's not me, and that's not the way I work. And my complaint with writing that way is that you're never going to get something unique and new. You're never going to get the number one. You're going to get a song that definitely charts, but it sounds too much like the other one. You know what I mean? Someone already did that. And I just don't, for me, that's just not an inspiring place to work from. And I don't think you get your best work when you do that. And actually, most of the songs that I have been involved with that were the biggest, usually were something different at the time. To use Call Me Maybe as an example, when that song came out and we put that out, there was nothing else that was centered in a string section. There was no string section pop song going on. And I think that I think that was one of several things that just sort of set it apart, along with Carly's amazing vocal performance on that song. But I think one of the things that helped that song is it didn't sound like anything else that was on the radio. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I by the way, I love the kick drum on Call Me Maybe. It's one of my favorite kick drums that was on the radio at the time.
Thanks. It's it's funny. I don't know if they're going to use it or not, but I just did like a 10 years later, and I did a recall of the session in the room where we mixed it and had the whole song back up on the faders.
Oh, cool.
And I was just kind of going through track by track, remembering what we had done and stuff. And there was 8 kick drums on that song. that kick sound, there's 8 kick sounds going on.
The funny thing about that is that I heard it on especially the Beat 92.5, our processing is it's double process. It sounds magical on the FM. And when that kick drum hit, it drove the freaking chorus, and I was like, why does it sound so good compared to everybody else?
It's just there were that many more kick drums in there. There's a lot of kick sounds.
But it's funny how something so minute like that, my ear caught that. I'm like, oh, I like that song because of that. Not that it was a shitty song. It was a great song, but there's little things in certain songs that people gravitate towards, I guess. Or I'm just a nerd,
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, it was so great to see you again in chat. This was awesome, man. The brand new song is phenomenal. This record, I'm honestly really excited to hear the rest of this now because this is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, when it comes out, when we get a chance to hear the entire thing, we'll do another chat and we'll go track by track.
Please, I would love to. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. We'll see you later. Thanks, man.
All right, have a good day.
All right.
Cheers.
Adios.
An all-new episode of the Jeremy White Podcast, Tuesday at noon. Available wherever you stream. Catch up on past interviews and episodes on demand now. Subscribe so you don't miss any of it.